We're going to switch it up a little bit here from healthcare and forests. The state of Oregon has established several funds where they invest money for this purpose or that purpose. It has been likened to some of the larger financial institutions or gurus in the financial industry, investing money. Do you think that is a proper role of the state of government of Oregon?
Well, there is a mismatch between money coming in and money going out. So you collect your taxes in April, and then there's this pile of money and you spend it. So to the extent there's a genuine mismatch between the money coming in and the money going out, it has to be parked somewhere. And that function has to happen, and that's the treasurer's job. But you do have this phenomenon of people then sort of building these empires and these little funds that get larger and larger and larger. And there's a wonderful case down in California, where the park system ran out of money. They closed all these parks, and then they discovered they were sitting on $54 million in this fund somewhere that no one even knew about. So there's a way in which we have let the government get way too free about this. But as Attorney General, unless they're setting up these funds on the sly, and in some way that's completely illegal, many times the legislature has enabled this conduct. And so the remedy, of course, is to elect people to the legislature like you and Gary and others who will restrict the ability of the agencies to go out and build private empires in this fashion.
Touched on a point regarding the way the federal government manages land, especially natural resources, and that might have to do with either natural gas or petroleum or timber. And what he touched on was when the federal government, when the deficit, when they can't come back and repay the debt, basically the currency will crash. But what they do have in place is they have these resources that they can sell back. So this all ties back to basically what you've touched on as well is the banking system, which is all tied back to the Federal Reserve. So my question is, if we can properly manage and bring the potential for prosperity for Oregonians, for essentially across the nation, and we can manage those resources and extract those resources, what would be a good point of approach for that? Because people have to work, people have to make a living. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody inherently wants to.
James?
Well, I got to say I got nothing against growing industrial hemp, but you got to have land to grow it on, and you got to have water to grow it with. And so the question remains, when you have the federal government owning 53% of Oregon and essentially saying no one can drive there and no one can cut anything there, and you need to create more jobs, you're going to need more land and more water. So I suppose you could cut down the forests and plant hemp there, but ultimately we have to have a broad-based economy that relies on not just forest products, but mineral products and fishing and agriculture and everything. And what I see is the government just stepping in and making it harder to do any kind of business at all. So I don't see, hemp is just a single bullet, but we need a lot more than just that to get Oregon working again. Well, I guess it goes back to this same vision of government. I think Oregon, we haven't had a great experience with the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. The heads of it are arrested for drunk driving. They have armies of restaurant police that go around and harass small businessmen by ordering things at midnight and multi-$1,000 fines. And so now we're going to have a whole, instead of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, we're going to have the Oregon Hemp Control Commission. We're going to have another whole army, and we'll have hemp police and cops and everything. I'd rather see them just legalize it, frankly, because I don't see this whole business of having the government. I have a different vision of government. My view is government is like the umpire, and the people are there and they're doing their thing, and when there's a dispute, the government steps in to do justice. And the government is not the one who says, oh, I think we need to do this, everybody do this, and we must do this, and we must do that, because that doesn't work, because every time we start having a government like that, they do all kinds of strange and stupid things that waste everybody's resource and impoverish the whole country. So I'm not a big Measure 80 fan. I mean, I understand why they're doing it, There are people who genuinely need it. There are people who can't get access. I understand this philosophy of incrementalism, but it's establishing another giant bureaucracy is dumb. And the funny part is, there were two initiatives that were going to be on the ballot. And one was this Measure 80, and the other was a simple, let's just legalize it. And what did the Democratic establishment do? The Democratic establishment went out there and fined the people who had the simple initiative $65,000 and threw out 48% of their signatures and just did everything they could to kill the simple solution in favor of, let's have another giant government program with permits and regulations and rules. And so that's what I think about that.
Well, it sounds...
How big should the government be in relation to the private sector? Let James start.
Okay. That's a very abstract question, and I can't answer it with a number like 47. You know, the magic number. I think we can that people who look at it honestly now can agree it's too big, and I think that we are to a point now where it is so big that it is destroying the private sector. So. And this question will be sort of resolved for us because the government ultimately can't be any bigger than the one we can pay for. You know, we can run up this credit card for a while, but then the bill comes due. And so the starting point for the size of government should be, we shouldn't have a government that's any bigger than the one we are willing to pay for now with our money and not our children's money and our children's money and our children's money. And so if you start with that, if the government actually had to take in taxes every dime it was paying, which is what it used to be before we decided to rip up the Constitution and lie bleeding on the floor, then there would be sort of a self-correcting thing where people would sort of, okay, we can have some more government, we can have some more government. Wait a minute, it's too expensive now. But because of this Ponzi scheme, where we just sort of borrow from futurity until we build up this giant parasitic enterprises that crashes, we've lost the natural relationship between sort of what the right size is. One can make the case that many government agencies have become inefficient over time. And if we look at fire agencies, for example, spend a very small percentage of their time now actually responding to fires. And we wind up with multiple agencies responding to the same thing. And there, you know, there certainly, in theory, there are things that government can do. And the problem is that in practice, we've gotten beyond where it theoretically works. You know, I mean, I like to say that communism is a wonderful thing for the commune. And in the commune, where you have, or in a small trucking company, you could have a bunch of people in a trucking company who were all sort of on the same wavelength as to how hard they wanted to work and how they wanted things to done, and they could kick the butts of a profit-oriented trucking company. Absolutely. But the beauty of the American system is that it gives people freedom to organize in a commune or organize in the capital labor model, and whoever can provide the services to the people wins. The problem with the government is that they don't have to compete. It's just, oh, we're the government, so you have to take our thing. I guess it's about choice. And we all want choice, you know, in our life. We want to be able to choose where we get our health care, where we send our kids to school, what type of thing we buy. And what we are evolving toward as the government becomes less and less accountable is less and less choice. And it's single payer. It is single. It is this rule. It is the bureaucrat. We now have a federal commissar of how many calories can you have in a school lunch all throughout America, because there must be one rule. It's 783 calories last year and 700 calories this year. And this is like a cancer that's creeping in, and it's confining us. And it's an invisible mechanism to some, but it is choking off our prosperity. And we need to elect people who have an interest in simplifying government and making it accountable and bringing back freedom. And